Hello and welcome back to my kitchen here at Seed & Sparrow Homestead. If this is your first time watching, my name is Kelsey. It is cold outside, you guys. It got cold so fast. It came out of nowhere. We've had 3 pretty hard frosts. It was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm seeing next week 26 overnight. And our daytime temps have been about 45 degrees. And yeah, the fall season just goes by so quickly. I know we're still in fall, but when I think of fall, I think of the leaves changing. And now like all the leaves are gone already around here. There's just a few stragglers hanging on, and that to me just like looks like winter. It feels like winter. We've had a few days already where it's felt like snow. But anywho, with that said, with how cold it is, you know, I just had this realization that, oh my goodness, the holidays are going to be here in no time. We're in November. Like, how did that happen? So, with it being November, we host Thanksgiving here at our house. We squeeze a whole bunch of people in this tiny little home. And I want to prep some things. In years past, I'd go like way overboard and get myself stressed out over things, which was really not healthy, and I never enjoyed myself. So I did away with a lot of that, and I've really dialed back on how much I make and, you know, how creative I get with things. I've just now stuck to the good old staples, and have fun with a few little things because I like to make things fun for the kids. So what I've been doing is prepping things a few weeks in advance, things that will keep well in the freezer just to save myself some time. So I'm going to be sharing some side dishes with you all. Some of these I won't actually make ahead, but I still wanted to share them with you. We'll just eat them before Thanksgiving or Christmas. Some of them won't freeze well, but just to give you some other ideas in case you're like stuck in a rut and you just want to try something new. So I've got a few things we're going to make. We're going to start off with some dinner rolls that we're going to have fun with. So we're going to get working on that dough. All right, let's get this show on the road. So we're gonna do 2 different roll recipes. They're actually both very similar. One is one that is mine that I've been using for a good long while. And we're gonna shape those to look like mini pumpkins. This is what I've done for the last 2 years, and they're always a huge hit. Not really a ton of work. So we're gonna do half of them that way, and then we're gonna make another batch with a different recipe that's very similar to mine, but it's a bit of a different technique. And I thought they just looked really good. So we're gonna do 2. So we're gonna get to making those doughs now. Get my dough hook on here. You don't have to have a stand mixer like this, although it does make the job a bit easier. You can totally do it by hand. So we gotta get some yeast. All right, I got my active dry yeast. I've got a 1/4 cup of water here, and I have some honey. So we are going to start activating our yeast. So we're gonna take our warm 1/4 cup of water and throw that into the bowl. And then I've got to find my measuring spoon here. We need 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. I'm gonna add in 4 tablespoons of honey. I'm gonna mix this up quickly. We're gonna let this mixture sit for about 5 minutes until it gets nice and foamy. So while the first mixture is doing its thing, we're gonna work on the second dough. This one is a new recipe that I found online, and it requires instant yeast. You don't have to activate that, so we're just gonna throw everything all together in the bowl at the same time. So I'm gonna grab my dry ingredients. I need 3 1/4 cup of flour. I'm just using all-purpose organic white wheat flour. For the yeast, we'll do the instant yeast or the rapid rise yeast. We're gonna do 2 1/4 teaspoon. We're gonna do 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm using Redmond real salt. You need milk? Yeah. Okay, let's get you milk. Stir up these few dry ingredients. We're gonna add in 1 cup of warm milk, 3 tablespoons of honey, 1 egg, and 4 tablespoons of butter, room temperature. I'm just gonna mix all that up until it comes into a dough. If it's still a little bit sticky, you'll just wanna add a little bit more flour, not too much. We don't wanna make it dry. I'm gonna turn this out here to my table, a little bit of flour, and I'm gonna knead it for about 5 minutes. Smells really, really good. Here's our dough, all ready for its rise. I'm gonna stick it back in the bowl. We're gonna cover it with some plastic wrap. We're gonna let it go until doubled. My house is pretty warm right now, so it might only be about half an hour, but it shouldn't take much more than an hour. So this one's gonna go sit over there by the stove. We have bubbles. So now we will add half teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of milk, or no, a half cup of milk, sorry about that, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Mix that up. We're gonna add in 1 cup of flour, mix that up. And then our 2nd cup of flour. You should see a dough start to form now. If it's really sticky, you can add a little bit more. Now, since I already have this in my stand mixer, I'm gonna allow this to do the work for me, and I'm gonna let it knead the dough for about 4 minutes. All right, same thing here. I'm gonna cover this bowl up, allow it to double in size, roughly 30 minutes or so. This is such a beautiful dough. We have a little bit of downtime. The rolls are still rising over there, so I'm gonna move on to some homemade cranberry sauce. This stuff is so good. It's probably the best cranberry sauce I have ever had. I used to be a big canned cranberry jelly lover, the stuff that comes out in the shape of a can. But I haven't had that in quite some time. I needed to find a better alternative, healthier alternative. Cranberries are great, but high fructose corn syrup is not, and I'm very sensitive to corn products. So this is a great alternative, clean ingredients, still has a sugar in it, and you know, it's a treat. It's just a better, healthier option for this, and we don't eat this honestly a ton. So I have 1 bag of cranberries in here. I believe that's a 12-ounce bag. And I have 1 cup of raw organic cane sugar. So I'm also gonna add into this a cup of water. We're going to take this over to the stove and bring it to a boil. Our cranberries are boiling, so I've turned the heat down to low. We're gonna bring it down to a simmer. We're gonna add in a tablespoon of vanilla, two tablespoons of bourbon. the alcohol will burn off. I'm just getting the flavor. Now you can leave it just like this and it will be absolutely delicious, or you can jazz it up even more. We're gonna add in about a teaspoon of grated orange zest, orange peel. And if you want it to be spiced, you could throw in some cinnamon, nutmeg or cloves. Really make it however you desire. Now we're just gonna let this simmer for about 15 minutes. Our instant yeast dough here is ready, the new recipe that I'm trying. And I'm gonna get that out here onto my work surface. We're going to be making some honey butter to spread over the dough, and then we roll it up. So I've got 12 tablespoons of melted butter. We're gonna add in 6 tablespoons of honey. And get that mixed up. I have a 9x13 pan here, greased and ready to go. If you want though, if you're making these around Christmas, you could grab a cookie tray, line it with parchment, and then just assemble your rolls in the shape of like a Christmas tree or a Christmas wreath. I think that would be cute. So for this, I'm dividing it in half. I need to grab my rolling pin. And these are gonna get rolled out about a 1/4 inch thick and about a 12-inch square. So we're gonna brush this square with our honey butter. We are gonna be reserving some of this honey butter to brush on them after they are baked, so we don't need to use all of it. Just like that. I'm gonna cut this, let's see, how do I wanna do this? All right, into 6 strips. And then we are gonna roll these up. Gonna be a little bit messy, which is fine. And then go into our tray. The spiral side stays on the side. You want to tuck it so that the seam is on the bottom. Don't those look lovely? I'm gonna cover them and allow them to rise for about 30 minutes. Now, if you're looking to freeze these rolls like I am, there's 2 ways you can do it. At this stage here, before they've had their second rise, you can put them into the freezer now. And then once you would want to serve them the night before, you'd bring them out, let them thaw in the fridge, and then you would want to let them sit at room temperature to rise for about 30 minutes or so, or until they're nice and puffy and doubled. And then you'd proceed to bake them. How I have always done it, because I just don't want an extra step to do later, that to me kind of defeats some of the purpose. I want things ready to go. So I'm gonna just let these rise and then bake them, and then I'll allow them to cool, and then I will store them in the freezer until Thanksgiving. Then I'll do the same thing. I will thaw them the night before in the fridge. You don't want to thaw them out like at room temp. You're gonna have condensation, you're gonna have mushy rolls. So I'm gonna do it in the fridge, and then I will just reheat them. And then after they've been reheated, I will spread the honey butter mixture on them. I already have the honey butter mixture made. I guess I could just throw that in the fridge and it would be fine. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll top it with it and see how it freezes, but that's up to you. You can decide. This has been sitting now for at least 15 minutes. I'm gonna turn the heat off and it will thicken up as it cools down. It smells so, so good. Whoa. All right, our second dough is ready here. This is my tried and true recipe. We're gonna make some pumpkin shaped rolls. Just have a little bit of fun with these. My kids think these are pretty cool. So, we're going to divide this into 12 rolls. So from here, we're gonna just shape them into a little ball like that.
I have a whole bunch of baker's twine cut into 10-inch long pieces. We're going to use 4 per pumpkin. So we're going to put the pumpkin actually seam side up. We're going to have the nice side on the bottom. Now here I had started off tying each string just with one loop, one tie. That's totally not necessary. About the third one in, I just realized how I had done it previously. It had been about a year since I'd done this. You can just kind of overlap them. You don't have to tie them. If you flip it over, they'll hold tight enough, snug enough so that they don't let loose. That way you don't have to go through and cut each one off, because that's a pain, let me tell you. Here are the pumpkin rolls all wrapped up. So these are gonna sit for 30 minutes now. Here are the honey butter rolls that have been rising now for 30 minutes, so they're gonna go in the oven at 350 for about 18 to 22 minutes until they're golden brown. Don't they look so cute?
They're gonna rise and expand a little bit more once they bake. But I have mixed up. So this is just a little bit of butter with some turmeric and a tiny bit of beet powder. Those are just 2 things I have on hand to make a little bit of an orange glaze almost, just totally not necessary. And you really don't want like a ton of this or have it be really concentrated with either the beet or the turmeric, because you're gonna have a funky flavor. But just to give it a little bit of color. All right, these guys are going in 350 for about 20 to 25 minutes.
As soon as these honey butter rolls came out of the oven, I brushed them with the remaining honey butter that I had. We did end up tasting one of these. I just had the littlest bite. I am staying away from gluten right now, but we can confirm these are absolutely divine. You have to make them. They're so simple. They don't take a whole lot of time, and they have really clean ingredients in them compared to what you would find in the grocery store with those pre-made rolls. So if you do have the time, I highly recommend these. I like to add a little stem. I only had some cinnamon sticks on hand, but for a cheaper option, I would just use the little pretzel rods you can get at the store.
So both of these rolls here, I'm gonna allow to cool completely. Then I am going to probably lay them on a piece of saran wrap, wrap them all up together, and then put them into a Ziploc bag to store in the freezer. For the cranberry sauce, same thing, let that cool completely, and I'll just put that into a Tupperware container to bring out about the night before Thanksgiving. Allow everything to thaw in the fridge, and then I'll just do reheats the next day. It is a new day. It's Sunday. We just got home from church. We just ate lunch, and kiddos are playing. You're probably gonna hear them in the background. My husband's off doing something this afternoon, so I'm gonna use this time to make a few more sides in preparation for the holidays. We're gonna be working on a sweet potato casserole. I know that's not like any new idea, but I love it, and I'm making it gluten-free and refined sugar-free so that I can have at least a little bit of it. I am still full carnivore, but there's a few things I know that I can have in moderation that shouldn't flare me, so we're definitely gonna do some sweet potato casserole. I'm gonna make some stuffed roasted acorn squash. I just love these things. Don't they just scream festive to you? Like, I don't know, having this on the Thanksgiving table, just, I don't know, it makes me happy. But we're gonna make some of those. They're really yummy, super easy to make. Both those things can be made in advance and be frozen. Now, there's one dish that I'm going to make, and that is bacon wrapped asparagus with a honey balsamic glaze. So good. It's something else that I can also have in moderation. So this is not something I would make in advance. You'd have really mushy, stringy asparagus if you froze it after it's been baked and then try and reheat it. And I don't know, I'm not a fan of that. So this is something I would probably at least somewhat prep the night before and then make it that day, but it's not super time consuming. You could wrap these in bacon and just have them sitting in the fridge to bake the next day. Quick whip up the honey balsamic glaze, and super easy. So we're gonna do that. We're also going to do a pineapple stuffing. This is something that's really popular in our family. It's definitely not something that I can consume, but I know other people will enjoy it. So I'm gonna make a single batch of that, stick it in the freezer. It is fantastic with ham and with that homemade cranberry sauce we made all together. So, so good. So I am going to start chopping up a few things. We have some roasting to do. So I've got some parchment lined baking sheets here. We're gonna slice these acorn squash. These aren't actually acorn squash. I think these are more of like a dumpling squash, which is fine. The farmer's market didn't have any actual acorn squash, but I think they still taste pretty much the same. And then we're going to poke these with a fork about a bajillion times so we don't have an explosion in the oven, which I need a fork. So I'm just gonna take a fork and poke this all over. Funny story, when I did the potato video, I think it was like 2 or 3 videos ago, I did poke all of the potatoes, but apparently one of them I did not poke well enough, and there was potato all over the inside of my oven. So make sure that you poke them. For this sweet potato casserole, I have 3 pounds of sweet potatoes here that I have washed and dried. You're supposed to wrap them in aluminum foil, but I don't love using aluminum foil, so we're just doing it like this on a baking sheet. We're gonna roast these at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes to an hour. We'll check on them because some of these are pretty skinny. I'm not sure it'll take quite an hour. Got the sweet potatoes ready. And we're gonna slice these squash here in half. And grab a bowl and a spoon, and we're gonna scoop out the guts and the seeds. I don't know what else to call them. I always call them the guts. And this will be a fun treat for the chickens. None of us are really a fan of pumpkin seeds in our house. These smell super sweet. All right, we're gonna lay these flesh side down on a cookie sheet here. I'm gonna get these and the sweet potatoes into the oven at 400 degrees, and we'll check on them in 30 minutes. They'll probably go at least 45 minutes, if not an hour. So while we wait for those things to roast, we're gonna work on the pineapple stuffing. This is some French bread I had in my freezer that needs used up, so I'm going to cube this up. My recipe calls for 5 slices of bread, which I've always found to not be enough, especially if you're using like store-bought pre-sliced bread. I'm thinking it means more like good thick slices of homemade bread. So I'm gonna kind of go by the way it looks here because I've made this quite a few times, and then once it's cubed, I'll measure that up to give you guys a more exact measurement. I don't know that this is gonna be quite enough, but I have some of that rustic loaf we made in my last video that I might cube up as well. So let me slice this up, measure it out, and we'll see what it looks like. All right, so I am using a 2-quart baking dish for this, and I just want to see, going by visuals here. So there's a cup. Oh, now it's stuck. I'm gonna say 5 cups of fairly packed bread cubes going into this dish. And that's about how full it should look. We're gonna head back here to the stand mixer and put together the rest of this stuffing. First ingredient is gonna be a 1/2 cup of butter. It should be room temperature. I had to heat it up a little bit so it's slightly melted. We're gonna add in a cup of sugar. I am using raw organic cane sugar here. I might go a little bit light on the sugar, it can be a little overly sweet. I'm gonna do 3/4 cup. Put that in here. Sounds like our oven's done. I'm gonna cream this together first. That creamed together, so now we're gonna add in 4 eggs. I have a 20-ounce can of crushed pineapple here that I have drained. This is no sugar added pineapple, so that's gonna go in. Mix this up, and then we're just gonna fold in our bread cubes. We got our 5 cups bread cubes gonna go in here. Fold that in to our pineapple and egg mixture. Pour this in here. That's how it should look before going into the oven. It's gonna bake at 350 for 1 hour, and then make sure to let it sit for a little bit so it sets up.
We're gonna prep the filling for our acorn squash. I have 3 apples here. You can use the variety of your choice. These are a fun variety from one of our local orchards called Ludicrisp. They have flavor notes of pineapple and strawberry in them, and they're unlike any apple I have ever tasted. We're hooked on them. So good. So I'm peeling them and I am dicing these up. I'm gonna throw everything into a bowl so that we can mix it up. So 3 apples diced going in. I'm gonna throw in a 1/2 cup of dried cranberries and a 1/2 cup of raisins. I chopped up a 1/2 cup of pecans and threw them in as well. Now we add in some spices like cinnamon, some thyme, and a little bit of nutmeg. I'm going to mix this up, and you can either cook it on the stovetop, or because I already had the oven going and I had sheet pans out from roasting, I just decided to lay it out on the sheet pan, and this will roast at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes or until the apples are just about tender. Now, obviously, this is a side dish that I'm making, but you can make this a main course. You could just add in your choice of ground sausage meat cooked, and these are delicious that way. Although I will say, if someone is not a squash lover, this will not make them a squash lover. Matt despises pumpkin squash of any sort, and I took a bite out of one of these. I was like, oh my goodness, Matt, these are so good. You have to try it. And I gave him some, and he wasn't very pleased with me. He said that I could have the rest of them. So if you don't like squash, you won't like these. So what I had done there, I took some apple cider that I had gotten from the farmer's market, and I brushed it on my roasted acorn squash. Filled it with the filling that had come out of the oven, and then I sprinkled the flesh of the squash with some coconut sugar. But if you don't have coconut sugar, I would just use brown sugar just to get that nice caramelized edge. I also drizzled each one of them with some maple syrup, probably totaling about a 1/4 cup between the 8 of them. These are so good. This is coming from a squash and pumpkin lover. So if you love those things, definitely try it. Here is the pineapple stuffing straight out of the oven, looking beautiful and golden brown. The top and the edges get just a little bit crispy, which is honestly my favorite part. Like I said, this is so good on its own. It's very reminiscent of like a bread pudding, just totally different with the pineapple element in there, but great with some ham and that cranberry sauce. Try it, and I hope you love it. So we're going to move on to our sweet potato casserole. I had the 3 pounds of sweet potatoes roasted and peeled going in. I mashed them up in my KitchenAid. And to that, I am going to add a 1/4 cup of salted butter, we melted, a 1/4 cup of heavy cream, 2 eggs. I added in a 1/2 cup of coconut sugar, although you could just use brown sugar in its place. I also added in a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, a teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, a pinch of ginger, and a pinch of nutmeg. I'm going to mix all this together, and I have I used a little bit smaller pan. I believe it was an 8 by 11. You could use an 8 by 8. It'll just be a bit thicker in there, but totally up to you. I'm going to prepare a crumble for the top of it. I used a 1/4 cup of butter softened, a 1/2 cup of coconut sugar, or you could use light brown sugar, dark brown sugar, whatever you have, a 1/2 cup of gluten-free flour. You can use regular all-purpose if you don't need gluten-free, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and a 1/2 cup of pecans. Just mix this together until it forms some bigger crumbles, and we're going to assemble our casserole here. Now, I personally love sweet potato casserole with marshmallows on it, although I just don't buy store-bought marshmallows anymore because of the terrible ingredients in them and all the corn syrup. Like I said, I'm sensitive to corn products. So I do have some homemade recipes for marshmallows with clean ingredients. However, I haven't had much luck with them melting well or getting like nice and brown on the top. But if any of you have had any success with homemade marshmallows, let me know, because I would love to put marshmallows back on my sweet potato casserole. Regardless, it's still wonderful and it tastes so, so good. So we're going to move on to some bacon wrapped asparagus. I just took like 3 to 5 spears depending on the size, and then wrapped a half piece of bacon around them. If you want to get a little bit more fancy, you could do prosciutto wrapped asparagus. Bacon's just fine for me. I'm a huge bacon lover. So I got all of them assembled. I did pour a little bit of ghee over the tops of the spears. I like when they get a little bit crispy. I did salt the tops of the spears as well, and they went into the oven at 400 and roasted for 15 minutes. So now I'm going to make this honey balsamic glaze. I added in a 1/3 cup of honey, and I brought that up to a boil to where it would bubble. Then we take it off of the heat and add in a 1/3 cup of balsamic vinegar, a good pinch of garlic powder, and a pinch of salt. We mix that up, we reduce the heat, and we allow this mixture to reduce into a glaze. It reduces to about 1/3 of the total content that you begin with. So once it gets to that glaze stage, we bring it over and top all of our roasted asparagus and bacon. Oh, this is so good. Like I said, I wouldn't make this more than a day in advance. I wouldn't even totally prepare them a day in advance. I would just assemble them and have them waiting in the fridge to roast right before everybody arrives. Have my glaze going on the stove top so that I can brush them with the glaze and then pop them over to the dining room table for everyone to enjoy. Confession though, these went into this container, although I ate half of them before they went into the fridge, and then I finished off the container the next day. I love these so, so much. And thankfully, asparagus I tolerate very well, and it's so good for you. So I've got all of these 3 here. They're waiting to cool off completely before I get them ready for the freezer. All I'm going to do is apply some plastic wrap over the top, making sure it's nice and secure, and then I will top that with aluminum foil. I'll also write on top of the aluminum foil what I need to do with it after it has thawed, and like I said, it will all be brought out the night before Thanksgiving or Christmas, whenever we're eating these, and it'll thaw in the fridge, and then I'll just go and reheat everything in the oven. And as always, you can find all of the ingredient list down in the description, and I will make sure to leave instructions for freezing and for reheating. So now that I got these things done, I'll have a few more things to do for Thanksgiving yet. My mom and my sister also bring some things as well. My sister usually takes care of the potatoes, and she'll bring corn and drinks. And my mom and I, one of us will do the turkey, the other will do the ham. My mom usually brings some carrots as well, so we'll have a nice assortment for Thanksgiving Day. Be sure to tune back in on Friday. I'm going to have some yummy pies coming your way for the holidays. I'm also going to feature a gluten-free crust. I'm trying a few out so that I can have a little bit of pie on Thanksgiving as well. So make sure to come back for that. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Any questions, go ahead and drop them down in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed hanging out with me in my kitchen. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.